Welcome, everybody, to the CJ Hoops podcast. We are reaching you after game one of the Cavs-Knicks, but more importantly, we're reaching you after game one of OKC San Antonio. Josh, good morning. How's it going?
Good morning. Good morning. We've been talking about this series for many a months, and somehow it exceeded our expectations. So let's get into it.
Dude, this is what you watch basketball for. This is why you wade through the morass of a February Grizzlies Washington game where they're playing Jameer Watkins 47 minutes. This is why you go through the whole season, is to get to stuff like this. And it not only delivered, it was the first double OT game in 5 years in the playoffs. Did you hear that?
I did not, and I know we had talked about it on the first one. This is the first matchup of 62 plus win teams since the 98 finals. So, man, it had the feeling of sort of a old-fashioned UFC heavyweight or boxing heavyweight matchup where you just don't know what's going to happen before the game, and somehow, again, it lived up and exceeded what anyone could have possibly expected out of that first matchup.
If you watch any tennis currently, you see Alcaraz and Sinner are levitating above everybody else. And the Spurs, and particularly Vic, is like Alcaraz, this guy who can do stuff that no one's ever seen and just continues to amaze. And then OKC is workman like Sinner. They're just going to keep coming, um, and they're not going to stop. So they were both playing basketball at such a high level, which was funny to then contrast the game, the NBA TV series Cavs-Knicks, which is just mistakes all over the place, and just it was great in its own right. But it this Western Conference Finals, to me, this is just the NBA Finals came early. Whoever goes through here is going to take the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar thought when watching the game last night. If you're any of the 28 other teams and you're hoping to eventually reach a level where you could compete for a championship, and you watch that game on Monday night, the gap between the way those two teams are playing and everyone else, especially if you're a team in the West that has aspirations of at some point making the conference finals, you've got to be watching that and just saying, holy shit, we are miles off the pace of being able to compete with those two juggernauts.
Yeah, I think Denver can raise their level to get there. I think the Wolves can raise their level when everything's clicking and right to get there. But yeah, it's what a joy to watch two teams who are there. And like we're saying, people follow the leader. You follow the leader. And Vic is totally the leader of this team. This is why you were asking before if you could trade for Giannis, would you? And I said no. Vic's destiny is to be the leader for a championship winning team. Maybe it doesn't happen this year, but that is 100% what he intends to be and what that organization expects from him and what his teammates expect from him. You heard Steph Castle after the game come up to him and go, best player in the fucking world. And then he said it again in the tunnel, or in the post game. And he truly believes that. And all the guys around him believe that Vic is the best player in the world. And there were a lot of instances in that game where it wasn't even disrespect that San Antonio was showing against OKC. It was just they showed no fear of their championship pedigree, and they're going to take it to them. Um, Vic was cramming on Chet's head over and over, taking offensive rebounds over J-Dub when he's well boxed out, but the dude has an 8-foot wingspan. Got a big putback in OT that way. Laughing at SGA when he got a board over him. Big block to end the game and then stunting in front of his bench. And then it followed. Vassell hit Jared McCain with the too small. Steph Castle jumping off two to cram it on SGA in overtime. These are big plays that San Antonio's clearly just not scared of OKC, and they weren't in the regular season when OKC was looking like world beaters that maybe could have taken the regular season wins record. So right out the jump, both teams are really bringing their best. So I'm stoked for the rest of the series. What do you see just kind of from the energy of the game? And yeah.
You mentioned it. I mean, they're now 5-1. San Antonio is against OKC. And any time that a team has gone 5-1 against a defending champion, the team has gone on to beat that team in the playoffs. So San Antonio clearly, whatever sense of invincibility that OKC has instilled, that fear in the rest of the league, San Antonio does not look at them and
No.
have any sort of fear. And whenever you and I have talked about San Antonio and their ability to win the championship, it's always come down to young teams just don't win, in large part because young teams don't know how to win. And what I think we're seeing above all else is San Antonio, before our very eyes, is figuring out how to win. Whenever we've had Vic conversations on this podcast, it has always revolved around there are times, especially offensively, where he will allow the defense to dictate what he does. Settle for a little too many threes. He's 7'6". He'll go, sometimes he wants to play in that mid post a little too much. And everyone has always been like, if he just goes to the basket, he's going to be unguardable because there's nothing you can do with him around the basket. Well, last night he takes 25 shots, or game one he takes 25 shots, 13 free throws, only 2 3-pointers, one of which is that famous 3-pointer that will now live in immortality, the homage to Steph Curry. And to your point, he just put constant pressure on the rim. The Spurs made the Thunder do exactly what the Spurs wanted them to do instead of allowing OKC to dictate the terms. And I thought Vic was just a shining example of that. He lived in the paint. He lived on the glass.
Yeah. 9 offensive boards.
Absolutely.
So he was right there.
Yeah. And look, I want to do a glass, we keep talking about that idea of glass half full, glass half empty. Vic was dominant. If you're OKC, Chet just got shoved into a locker for 3.5 hours on national television. So I want to do a lot more of the Spurs side, but especially as it relates to Chet and OKC, what did you see in that game where you think, hey, going forward, these are possible roadmaps for us to not only stay in this series, but, to win this series, because we are talking about the 68-win defending champs here.
It's kind of crazy. They figured in the first few minutes that they just couldn't play Hartenstein when Vic was on the floor. He ended up with only 12 minutes played in a game that went 50, whatever. And I think OKC needs to play through Chet offensively more. And Chet has shown that when injuries have occurred for this OKC team, he has stepped up as an offensive force. There was 0 play through him last night. He finished with 8 points. Just really was kind of an afterthought offensively. And he's a talented offensive player, and has become a more confident and integrated part of their offense. So I would expect them to play through him more in the next game.
Yeah, I think it was widely discussed going into this series about how Jalen Williams' reintegration would impact the rest of the Thunder lineup. And I thought Jalen Williams played incredible in game one.
He was solid.
Especially for a guy who hasn't played basketball in 2.5 weeks, being thrown into that game with that level of intensity and saying, hey, you need to go score 20 points and you need to guard Vic on the other end. But there was a clear idea of how does this impact Chet and AJ Mitchell? And the fear for the Thunder was it would take away from their rhythm and flow. And those concerns really, really showed themselves in that game one. AJ Mitchell was, for
Also
most
an
of the
afterthought.
game, exactly, sort of invisible. And Chet was just not impactful on either end of the floor. He was late rotating on defense. Vic just had no fear of him. Every time Vic saw him, his eyes just lit up and said, let me go at him one more time. And then offensively, everything you're saying, I totally agree with. He was spaced on the perimeter, but he wasn't really a threat out there. He wasn't really a threat inside. He was just sort of in no man's land when you're playing 41 minutes and you have 8 points on 2 of 7 shooting. You just have to be more impactful one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, glass half full, I mean, you could go up and down OKC's roster, and every single player besides Caruso didn't play up to their normal level.
And
so glass half full.
Alex Caruso play above his level. Oh my goodness.
Bro, he was arguably the second best player in the game. He defensively as well, just scratching, clawing against Vic, doing just enough, really bend but don't break defense. And then offensively, just being a 3-point release valve. Vic wants to roam in the paint and just destroy defenses or destroy their offense. Um, and Caruso made him pay over and over again. That kind of kept them in the game. It felt like for most of the game that San Antonio should have been up 15, should have went up 20, and they just weren't able to pull away because Caruso and yeah, I mean they should have pulled away, but they couldn't. Um, let's talk a little.
Here was my other problem with the Thunder in Game 1.
Yeah,
And I think for all of the benefits of having a 13-man rotation and being able to have so many players come off the bench that just know their role and are able to contribute, and that was the Thunder's superpower all year, Dagenham played 12 guys in the first 15 minutes. And it just felt like there were too many different new variations being introduced all at once. It's like, okay, Hartenstein's out. Well, now let's try Aaron Wiggins. Okay, Wiggins is out. Let's try Jared McCain. Let's try big Jalen Williams. And it just felt like the Spurs in that game knew their rotation, knew what they wanted to do throughout the game, whereas the Thunder were, hey, let's try stuff and let's figure out what works. And I just felt like that set a tone throughout the game of we're just going to try stuff.
yeah.
And so I don't know if you felt that as well when you were watching, but it just felt like every single possession, it's like, wait, now who's on the floor for the Thunder? Wait, have we seen this lineup before? What is this lineup trying to do? And so I know that the Thunder throughout the regular season have played all of these players, but it just really surprised me to see in a Game 1 so early in the game every single one of them get a throw, because I would have rather him said, here's my 10 guys for today. Let's see how this one goes. He didn't play Isaiah Joe, which was surprising to me. I figured if any of the guys deeper in the bench, that would be someone just to unlock some shooting and make the Spurs respect one more perimeter threat. But I just was surprised at how quickly he was just sort of in, we got to spin the wheels and we got to figure out what we're trying to do here stage.
First off, I root for a team that started Ron Harper Jr. and Luka Garza in a Game 7, and that didn't work out. So I understand that, it doesn't show confidence to run through a bunch of iterations in the first quarter. I would expect a more focused rotation and game plan from OKC in Game 2. But when, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. It's a Mike Tyson truism there. You never see SGA get stonewalled like that by defenders. And he was just getting stood up over and over or denied the ball or they're bringing the double. They're making everyone else but him beat you. And that doesn't happen to them often. So they had to pivot off that because Vic is able to stop everything in a paint in a way that other teams can't. So, yeah, they got punched in the mouth and they tried to find some new stuff.
And I'm happy you brought that up because I do think for the Spurs side, the combination of Steph Castle and Carter Bryant are as good of a tandem to put on someone like Shea, especially Steph Castle, because when I was watching with friends during the game, I was saying it's surprising to me because no wing has that impact on Shea. Whenever we've seen a Jaylen Brown guard him, a Jaden McDaniels guard him, a Dylan Brooks guard him, Shea doesn't really seem to have that much of an issue in those matchups. And what I feel like we saw during Game 1 is it's because Steph Castle is just as strong or close enough in strength to some of those more traditional wings, but is also just as quick as Shea is.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different animal where Shea can say, hey, normally I'm stronger than the small people you put on me, or I'm faster than the big people you put on me. Well, here comes Steph Castle, who looks like he was just built in a lab to defend someone like Shea. And then you bring in Carter Bryant, who has those young legs. So I'm totally with you. I think that all of the credit, and certainly much of it deserves to go to Vic because he instills confidence in those defenders of you can take that extra step out there. And we saw him block Shea's sort of pet shot in that mid-range at the end of the game along that right baseline. But those guys' ability to stay with him without fouling, completely impressed by. What did you see?
It's not going to last, though. He's too good of an offensive player to be bottled up like that. I think they could also run him off some screen actions, just get him downhill a little more with his catches instead of him just getting mobbed by a double and really stilted there. Um, but Shea, it's also on Shea because he came out and he was searching for like fadeaway mid ranges. That I think that's when you saw it in the playoff run last year. That's when they can get into trouble is against Indiana or against the Wolves. If he starts relying on that mid range that are well contested and they aren't going in, things get real tight for them. So I think he's too good and too experienced to continue to be stonewalled like that. Um, we could talk about these guys all day and these plays all day, but we got to go through some of these plays because there was some incredible stuff down the fourth, down the stretch. Dylan Harper outplayed SGA for 3.5 quarters.
Yeah, he did.
He sure did. Your guy, yeah,
Let's
your
go.
guy. And then SGA finally started to get it cooking. He got a finish over Vic, a bump him off, midi over him. Caruso hit some huge threes in the fourth, drew an offensive foul on Vic for a turnover. And then J-Dub hit a huge floater, come back the other end. Vassell had a huge three. Champagny had a huge three. One of the big plays down the fourth was OKC getting a steal on a Vic pick and roll where they just weren't sharp a lot of the times in the game, and there were those young turnovers trying to get it to Vic in that center spot. SGA has a 2-on-1 with Caruso, and he tried to get a layup on Castle, and Castle stonewalled it, and huge effort to get the ball back by San Antonio. And OKC had multiple chances to win this game down the stretch. They should have gotten a turnover, but they fouled at the end of the shot clock with 37 seconds left to make it not a tie game. And then, I mean, in OT, Steph had that just packing it over SGA with the dunk. Vic putting it on the floor to keep a possession alive. Just a Tommy point from a 7'6" dude getting on the floor to keep it alive. And then kind of the moment we got to talk about, Jamal Crawford called it out. I knew I had, the memory of it, but it was the double bang, Mike Breen, Steph Curry 3.
In the same arena.
Same arena, same place on the floor. That was like first of all, that's the deepest shot of Chet's career, or of Vic's career. And he walked up, knew he was going to take it. There was nothing anybody could do. It's one of the greatest shots of all time, right?
I think for who it was in the moment, there's a lot of great shots, but when we think about Vic's career to this point and we think about what this series and could potentially outline for the rest of the decade between these two teams, I think it's a shot we'll all remember. And the craziest part is, we had talked about it earlier on, Vic spent the entire game playing like Shaq.
Yeah.
Everything was around the rim. Everything was offensive rebounds, dunks, blocks. And so for this 7'6" guy who had just ripped your heart out for 40 minutes, dominating you in the painted area, to then say, you know what, actually, I got one more for you. Here's a 35-footer, 28 seconds left in the game, down 3. Let me just make sure that you know that I can do this too. And we've seen it throughout the playoffs. This is what happened in the Minnesota series. This is what happens when there's games with stakes. He wants to take that shot.
Yeah.
And, the other thing that came into mind is we've always talked about OKC potentially as sort of this new age Warriors. This generation's Warriors, where, Oracle was an absolute fortress. And Paycom is not an easy place to play. And even when you were going through all of those plays, and obviously Vic shot at the end, that arena was on fire. And it just did not impact him, and it did not impact the Spurs. And if anything, it empowered Vic and the team to say, once we break your guy's heart, this place is going to be silent.
Yeah.
And it felt like after that shot, the entire arena just went like, oh my God, what are we going to do with this? And so I'm totally with you. An insane shot from an insane player and something that will certainly be in his career highlights, even if he goes 20 more years, like that shot will live on because that is just such a I'm here, deal with it type shot. Did you
Yeah.
think it was going in when he shot it?
Yeah.
Okay. See,
They to me they have that air of like destiny. They really do. Like same way Indiana had the kind of air of destiny with all those clutch shots all the way through the run and that belief. And they almost made it. They have that look. I've said San Antonio's had that look for a while. That they could win the title. I picked them for the title at least a month ago. So yeah, you're asking a guy who believes, and a lot of people have picked them for the series, which is crazy. A lot of our friends have. So it's not just me.
Before we move on, you brought him up very briefly, but we would not be doing an homage to a real muse of this podcast if we didn't have a longer discussion about it. I mean, Dylan Harper's 20 years old. I mean, come
Bro.
on. What more do you have to see? The guy goes for, what does the guy go for? He plays 47 minutes. He has 24 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 7 steals, and a single turnover in his first career playoff start. I mean, come on.
We haven't said one guy's name yet, and that's De'Aaron Fox.
I
And
looked. I
Dylan
said
Harper
to my
is why.
group, I said to my group before the game started, I don't think that they will be as impacted with De'Aaron Fox's absence. And you heard Reggie Miller on the broadcast at different points say it would be really nice to have Fox here to settle down some of these possessions. I don't think that's an unfair comment, but I do think that there's a lot of different elements of what a Dylan Harper, Steph Castle backcourt brings, primarily from a positional size standpoint on defense. You know, Dylan Harper is guarding Jalen Williams for extended portions of that game.
Yeah.
I don't think De'Aaron Fox is taking that matchup. And because your center is 7'12", you can throw the ball. De'Aaron Fox has value. We talked about it going into this series at the end of last series. It's not like he was playing the most efficient basketball of his career. So I by no means think that De'Aaron, actually I kind of do, but I'm not going to say it. De'Aaron Fox will start the next game he plays. That makes total sense. I think the Spurs don't win that game without Dylan Harper playing the way he played and playing the amount that he played.
Well, they really sold out because if they didn't win that game, they're probably not winning game 2 as well. Every single guy played like upwards of 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Vic's never played anywhere near that much. No. You could tell those guys said, this is the hardest game I've ever played in my life after winning it. They really sold everything and put it all on the table, and they came out with the win, barely. I think game 2, OKC is just, once they get up a little bit, they're going to get up a lot of bit. We'll see. I mean, San Antonio has pride, but they'd be better served by just conserving energy and just being happy that they got one. If they take 2 in OKC to start the series, that would shock me. I mean, it would be shocking to everyone.
Well, all I'm going to say is, while San Antonio's guys played a lot of minutes, Shea played 51 minutes, Jalen Williams played 37 minutes in for his first game in 2.5 weeks. Chet played 41. It was a war on both sides. So what I've learned throughout watching these two teams play is it's probably going to be close at the end, and it's probably going to end up right around a 50-50 game. Some team's going to make a couple of key plays down the stretch and take it. I don't think that any of these games are going to veer on singular domination.
Yeah. We got game 2 tonight. Can we talk about the JV series?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and let's give it JV timing. No, I was nervous about my Knicks in 4 pick with about 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then after that, I had the biggest fucking smile on my face. Because Cleveland is going to do what Cleveland does. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last night. Just a classic Cavs James Harden nightmare at the end of the game.
It's pretty nip tuck, and it's James Harden on both ends of the floor. Um, you put him one on one with Jalen Brunson, and Brunson is just cooking him over and over and over. And the Cavs are not bringing help. He's getting by him first step. There's a step back three that's just a heartbreaker. And then on the other end of the floor, it's Harden, dribble, 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 step back, clang, over and over and over. It was interesting. Just I think that gave me Donovan Mitchell injury. Is that what you saw too? Because he just did not want the ball. He came up lame once, which the broadcast crew did not pick up, but he came up very hobbling. Just didn't look like he wanted anything to do with the ball. And when both your star and then the guy you brought in both don't want to be involved offensively, and one is just getting cooked over and over again, this is when, like, a coach could sub a guy. Like, if they subbed Harden, they would have won that game. Like, that was just begging for Dennis Schroeder, right? I know you can't do that because you just brought in Harden 20 games ago to put you over the hump. But, like, dude, you have a game on the road. You need that game coming off 2 7-game series. Put Dennis Schroeder in the game.
This was always my concern about Cleveland. Lack of lineup flexibility. And you need Harden out there because you have to have one other scorer, especially when Jared Allen is going to give you 10 points and Evan Mobley is going to shoot 38% from the floor as a big. And you mentioned Don not really being at the races. Reverted back to we gave him so much praise in Game 7 for being aggressive, dictating terms, involving his teammates. And last night, 23 field goal attempts, 11 of which were threes, only 3 assists compared to 4 turnovers. Just sort of going back to everything we didn't want and everything we didn't want the Cavs to be. We didn't want the Cavs to be stagnant offensively. We didn't want the Cavs to allow the Knicks to be able to dictate so easily. And the Knicks, for a large portion of the game, showed a lot of rust from not playing for so long. And Cleveland was able to take advantage of that. And when New York started to turn up the heat, we saw Cleveland revert back to everything that we've always been scared of at the end of these games. Too much isolation basketball, too easy of options to pick on defensively, and just no real, while you got a decent Dean Wade game, you got
Max Strus,
a little bit from Strus, you just don't have that fifth player that is going to really instill fear. And when Harden is playing the way Harden's playing, you're just struggling to cobble together a five-man lineup that you think can compete at MSG when that stadium is just exploding in euphoria.
Yeah. Where would this team be without Max Strus? But yeah, the Donovan Mitchell thing from a superstar, that is what you just cannot have. You need them to be engaged, win or lose. Like, even if, it's kind of the old Kobe adage. It's like, you'd rather them be 3 of 22 than be 3 of 6 when you're that superstar. You have to be engaged. The ball has to find you and run through you, and you have to dictate it. He looked injured. Curious if he was. Either way, should we rest Harden for a game? Like that's what I would do. Like, he looked totally gassed.
I think it's always the point. The alternative is comparing it to a performance like a Jalen Brunson, where you see Brunson just take the game over at the end and say, I am going to shoot. I am going to. Because I think whenever you're a fan of a team, what you never want to see from your best player is them sort of take themselves out of the game. Everything you're saying, I couldn't agree with more. That's for one of the many reasons the Lakers fans love Kobe so much. It's why you want your best players to take control of the game, or at least say, I am going to have an outsized impact for better or for worse. And something you'll always say about Brunson is you are going to see him at the end of these games. And most of the time it's good, but even in the times it's not, he's never going to miss 3 shots and say, well, time for some Sam Merrill action, I guess. And that's always been the fear with Harden is, this is the same guy that had the infamous quote in the Game 7 when he was on the Sixers, the ball didn't find me, when you're the point guard. Kind of a difficult thing for the ball to not find you when you're the point guard. So Knicks are rolling. That felt like a game Cleveland needed to be able to stay in this series.
I think that's the series.
I now expect Game 2, New York, to come out a little bit less rust, a little bit more focus in terms of what they're trying to execute. What do you see with that one?
I think that's the series, but also, the Knicks are never above a collapse, and it took everything to not be down a game at home. But I think the Knicks are going to the NBA Finals, which, what was the last year, 95?
99?
99 against the Spurs, funnily enough. And, so, I mean, really, we've never seen it. And it's so exciting because New York is the biggest basketball city on earth, I think. And they are just clamoring for it, all generations. I mean, the young people that are our age, like, they don't even get it. Like, the people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, like, the last time they won was in the 70s. They've been, like, thirsting for this, and they love basketball. And I was saying to my buddy Duncan, who's a Brooklyn kid, the Knicks are going to riot, win or lose. Like, New York is going to riot, win or lose. It's just going to be cinema to watch. And I would love to be at those watch parties outside MSG. We should get a video on Sean, or we got to bring Sean on for if they make it, right?
Well, and where I think the Knicks, and it's the one through line between the Spurs, and absolutely yes to everything you're saying, New York is on fire. We'll absolutely need Sean on. He's so excited about it. The through line, as I'm thinking about what the Spurs and the Knicks share, is an understanding of their rotation at this point in the season.
Yeah.
And it's something we've talked about a lot throughout the playoffs.
There was a little Josh Hart for Landry Shamet down the stretch for some shooting, but they know who they are.
And again, they may not know their 5 all the time, but they certainly know their 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And their 8 or 9 makes sense. They know what levers to pull. And I think enough cannot be said about what the job Mike Brown has done, where he was much maligned throughout different points of the regular season. And we had Sean on this podcast a couple of months ago, and he referred to him as Mr. Potato Head and said, we're going to be on our 3rd coach in 3 years and run him out of town. And that's just a New Yorker being a New Yorker. Can't expect anything else. But we're at the point in the season where when you're Cleveland and you do the Harden trade and you sort of are, reconfiguring your team on the fly. And the obvious, again, for OKC, who didn't do anything but has so much continuity, but has so many players. When you don't quite know at the end of these games, this is the absolute lineup. It was mentioned on the broadcast for Thunder Spurs Game 1, that death lineup of Shea, A.J. Mitchell, Caruso, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren had played 3 minutes together all season. And now they're playing 9 minutes together in Game 1. Now, a large part of that is Jalen Williams being injured and not available for extended portions, but you never want to be in a game in the conference finals and say, well, let's try this lineup and see what happens. And New York and San Antonio and again, OKC and to some degree Cleveland are good enough teams to where I don't think either, and I picked OKC in 5. I'm going to stick with that. I see no reason that OKC cannot get back and win a lot of these close games at the end. They do have the MVP and the clutch player of the year. But I think that's a huge takeaway from Game 1, is the teams that understood what lineups they wanted to play in certain situations, they didn't blink twice, and they were able to take advantage of going against teams where there was a little bit more uncertainty with what combination of players they were hoping to put out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Then again, you can get punched in the mouth even if you know what you're doing. And then just being in the playoffs, the lights are bright. Certain guys are going to shrink. It's a different game. It's something I wanted to highlight is it's definitely called differently. And what a wonderful reffing job in game one of OKC, where SGA is not going to get the ticky-tack calls. And that changes how they play. Dort is fouling the shit out of Vic. Those guys are pushing him, shoving him. And the refs are not really calling it unless it's getting pretty egregious. And I think Vic got it out of his system with his jiu-jitsu elbow to the head of Jaden McDaniels. Naz Reid. He got it out of his system, and all year teams have tried just beating up on him. And I think he knows how to keep a level head through it all now and play through it. And by the end, I mean, he was getting those deep catches and just throwing it down on them. He's getting offensive rebounds as well. So he knows how to play through this contact now that the NBA playoff game is allowing. And it just makes for such a better product when we're not getting all this ticky-tack shit.
Man, 100%. And it's the leadership of Dylan Harper, who we just cannot emphasize enough on this podcast. No, I totally agree. I thought it was really well officiated. There was the Victor running over Alex Caruso and Dagenau saying it's a flagrant, and Zach Zarba just being like, that's not a flagrant. Shut up and go talk to your players, and let's continue with this.
Yeah.
We're not going to in any way impact the outcome of this game and have people talk about us the day afterward saying that we're the stars here. And it sets up for just such an exciting rest of the series. Let me ask you this before we get on out of here. Did either of the game ones change your predictions for the overall series winner or the number of games for the series?
I mean, New York, if they lost game one, for sure would have. But no, my picks look solid. I have San Antonio in 7 and Knicks, I said 5 or 6. So that looks good to me.
I feel great about OKC in 5. Thank you for asking. I really don't, but I'm gonna go down with the ship here. And
I liked the strong take, but
look,
nah.
man, it's Chet time tonight, and I don't think anyone is watching Chet and saying you have to be better than Vic, but you have to be.
You have to do something.
You have to be on the podium, and you can't be shoved into a locker when Vic is collecting trophies at the end of these games, and so. I will be very curious to see how Chet responds tonight and the Thunder overall. I think we talked about it throughout the season. This was a team that just faced no adversity. And really for the past 2.5 years has really not faced any adversity. They've just run roughshod over the entire NBA. No one can hang with them. No one can not turn the ball over against them. Well, now we mentioned it on last week's pod. If they're Rocky, this is their Drago. And this is the guy who they look in the mirror and it looks very, very similar from a way they play defense, the intensity, the athleticism. They have their own 7-foot freak alien that is significantly better than the Thunder's. So this is what I think we all hope for when we get into these series is a champion gets punched in the mouth and then we get to see how they respond. And tonight we're gonna see what that response looks like.
Couldn't have said it better. Follow the CJ Hoops podcast on all your socials at CJ Hoops Pod. We're going to come back in a few games. This is the best basketball time of the year. So if you're not watching it, tune in. If you're not watching it, why are you listening to us? that would be crazy. So watch the games. Listen to us. Couldn't be more excited for these and more excited to talk through them next time with you, Josh.
See you later, Chuck.
All right.